So welcome to Phenomenal Woman Wednesday. So today I have a very special guest. I have with me Dr. Stefanie Pettaway. Dr. Stefanie Pettaway is a clinical psychologist and she is owner of Empowered Living Psychological Services in Rancho Cucamonga, California. She has been in private practice for the past 8 years, and she works with adolescents and adults experiencing panic and anxiety, depression, phase of life challenges and transitions, identity and self-development, multicultural and diversity concerns, adjustment challenges, grief, and relational challenges. Wow, that's a lot.
It is.
Yeah. So thank you for being here. Thank you for being
Absolutely.
with me
Thank you for
today.
inviting me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, awesome. So Stefanie is a friend of mine, and she's also my sorority sister, and she's a phenomenal woman.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so I'm just really honored to have you here today, so I can share with my listeners how amazing you are.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
mhm. so first off, Stefanie, I'm going to ask you, well, Dr. Pettaway, I'm going to ask you, several questions that I ask every one of my guests, and then we'll jump into the questions that I have specifically for you.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So first off, what does it mean to you to be a phenomenal woman?
A phenomenal woman to me, well, first, I think every woman's phenomenal, but I think being able to be perfectly imperfect, right? So being able to be vulnerable, yet strong, um, being able to take care of ourselves, but also be of service to others. Um, and so really just kind of living in our truth, and being able to kind of be part of this big world and make it a little bit brighter, in spite of some of the crazy that we all have to deal with. So just being able to be a light.
Yeah, I love that. Perfectly imperfect. I
Mhm.
love saying that because
Yeah,
because perfection is a myth, right?
absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. And so, given your definition of phenomenal, who have been the phenomenal women in your life?
Well, definitely my mother, definitely. And I think the biggest piece was being able to kind of show me that it's okay to make mistakes and still push forward, and be successful in spite of that. So really
Hmm.
being able to push past adversity. And I think that's even what kind of led me to naming the practice empowered living, right? Is that no matter what's going on, you can still succeed. So I would definitely say my mother, first and foremost, and then my wonderful friends, right, being on this journey together, and all of our different struggles as we've pushed along. And of course, my sorority members, my Jack and Jill moms, really, have been a part of my life for a good amount of my life now. And really, just showed me that we can be very different, but still have a common goal of, again, being of service and pushing forward, but also taking care of ourselves. Clearly, that's most important.
Hmm.
But just being able to help me stretch and grow. So definitely, I have really tried to surround myself with a number of phenomenal women so that I'm always evolving and growing. So I would say, yeah, definitely mom first, then friends and sorority and Jack and Jill.
Yeah, I love that you start with your mom.
Mhm.
Almost every phenomenal woman that I've interviewed starts with her mother.
Absolutely.
And I think that's beautiful because some people don't have that story,
Absolutely.
or they're not able to acknowledge um, the perfect imperfection in their
Yes.
mother,
Yes.
right? So I think that's amazing. And then it sounds like you just surrounded yourself with a circle of people who are phenomenal. So you just
Yes.
continue to grow, right?
Absolutely. It took
Yeah.
me a second because the true my true nature is that of an introvert, so I tended to be by myself a little bit more. So it took me a second, but I would say once I got going, then I realized how important it was,
Hmm.
to surround yourself with people that are going to help kind of lift you up.
Yeah. Oh, awesome. So, what are the characteristics that you would say you've adopted based upon your circle, like from your mom, the phenomenal women in your life? What characteristics have you adopted as you've, traversed your own journey?
Um, I would say being very grounded in who I am, being able to be courageous in spite of fear. I think initially, fear sometimes sidelines us. And so seeing people in my life that, again, in spite of adversity, still move forward has been really helpful to me. So when I've been scared and freaking out, my mom said you get a day to cry and then you got to keep it going. So even though sometimes, things seemed a little bleak, being able to recognize that I was still able to excel. And I had people who were going to help me with that. So I would say the biggest piece is to keep going.
Mm-hmm.
And then, just taking care of yourself, realizing that you're important. And as much as I strive to be of service, that I have to kind of fill my own tank first to then, give to others. So I would just say, using my mom, she would have time where clearly she took very good care of us as children, but she would go out with her friends. She would, explore new things and do new things. And so I do try to pour into me some, try to evolve. I just bought myself a kayak, so we'll see how that
Oh,
goes.
that's
Get
fun.
out, but like just to do different things and
Yeah.
evolve and like keep going. So I would say recognizing that it's a journey. There's no necessarily like end point.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so, I keep trying to strive to figure that part out, like how to keep going, how to make the journey a beautiful one. Again, even though there's things that come up that, aren't necessarily the best,
Mm-hmm.
that we keep going. So I would say that's the biggest piece that
Yeah.
I've learned, that I've tried in everything that I try and do, whether it's family, work, is really just kind of pushing forward.
Mm-hmm. And that's life, right? Like, it's never going to be a straight shot up, we're going to have, those peaks and valleys, and it's how you ride those waves really,
Absolutely.
that really defines,
Everything in storms. Yes.
defines you. Yeah. And I like also that you had an example from your mom on how to like take space and time for yourself.
Yes,
Some of
absolutely.
us take a while to learn. It took me a while to really learn that I deserved that.
Yes.
But yes, I like that you had that example. So you were able to, would you say you've been doing that like from the time that you learned? Is that something that you adopted right away? Or did
I
it
would
take
say
you a while?
I adopted it right away. But again, I was a bit of an extreme extra introvert, so
Hmm.
I would do my own thing, but a little too much. And
I
so
see.
I had to
You have to.
evolve in, yeah, incorporating like others
Hmm.
outside of just kind of what I was doing. But even, when I had kids, my mom would be like, girl, you better let those kids, do this and do that. You go over there. Or, so she still, she even comes in my practice and she's like, you need to take a break. You're tired.
Oh, that's
She's
awesome.
still there to kind of tell me to, take care of me
Hmm.
while trying to, be of service to others. So
Yeah.
she's like a workaholic, but she always took her birthday off no matter what. So there was just this balance that she seemed to
Hmm.
have. And so I would say that I definitely always had that understanding, but it has evolved over time.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. So anyone who knows you,
Hmm.
um, you have a very your disposition is very even,
Thank you.
and you
My husband might disagree,
yeah.
but
Well, that's a little different. I mean, I guess they all kind of say that, right? Yeah. But yeah, but generally, you have a very even disposition. You don't seem to get your feathers ruffled too much. Like you seem to you like I when I you are very, I would say, strong personality.
hmm
And so many times you and I found ourselves at gatherings in the corner, like
yeah.
talk. But that's one of the things that I gravitated to you,
Mhm.
because I really admired how even you are,
Thank you.
and very fair to
Mhm.
me. Like when we would have our discussions, you're very fair. So given that,
Mhm.
it might appear to some that there's no challenges,
Mm.
right? Because, oh, Stephanie has it together, oh, Dr. Pettaway, she's got it all together.
No, not at all.
So 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 with that, have you had any challenges along the way? And or were doors just kind of swinging open, when you were interested in starting your practice, or just along your journey in general?
No, I definitely had challenges. Um, I would say one in particular that stands out is my, initially going to UCLA. I was used to being a smart kid, and then went to UCLA, and everybody is smart. So that's when I really understood the differences
Hmm.
in education, different schools, different districts, different neighborhoods, what's provided versus what's not. So when
Hmm.
I went to UCLA, I really struggled in the beginning, because I knew I was a smart kid, but I wasn't the best student.
Hmm.
Um, and having to kind of navigate that, even to the point of like almost being kicked out of school. And then that mama came in, and I was like, I can't get kicked out and tell my mama that so I got to figure it out. Um, so I would say, that was one, but, there's been things there where I didn't get jobs for certain, discriminatory reasons, and had to deal with an ombudsman
Hmm.
at UCLA. As far as my practice, I would say there's privilege in education, right? So
Hmm.
as I started to amass a couple of degrees, right, um, I wouldn't say that the looks changed as far as who is this person and should they be here?
Hmm.
Because of course, as you continue to advance as a woman of color, you end up being like the only one, and definitely African American. And so there would be this tone,
Yeah, the only one in the room.
yes, this tone, of who are you and do you really belong? But I would say that getting the degree still allowed for me to do things,
Hmm.
having to or being able to introduce myself as Dr. Pettaway shifted people's disposition, or the
Hmm.
way in which they would engage me once they found out. So I wouldn't say that I had a lot of concerns in opening my practice.
Hmm.
I was concerned, especially here in the Inland Empire, if I would be received well. But I have a wonderful friend who even got me to even think about private practice, Dr. Tanika Gale. And so when she first told me, like, yeah, we're going to open a practice in Riverside, I was like, girl, Riverside, who's coming to see us? And so it worked out, because clearly there's people everywhere that want someone with a diverse perspective that
Hmm.
they feel like will see them,
Hmm.
and not necessarily in a traditional manner. So um, again, I would say my education has given me some privilege, but there's definitely been struggles along the way. Um, and while I've definitely experienced that from other people, I would say some of the biggest struggles have been within myself. Again, really being grounded in kind of these new spaces. Um, while I was in school, my mother went back to school and got a degree. But for the most part, I still had that initial experience as like a first generation college student.
Hmm.
I really had to like figure all that out by myself.
Yeah.
Um, Again, being at UCLA, I'm a Bruin to the end, but there was still not a lot of us there. I went when they voted for, Prop 209 and all of that. So the numbers of people of color, in particular African Americans, really decreased while I was there.
Hmm.
So there was definitely some of that, and trying to figure out my own space there, and really digging into like, well, who do I want to be, and then how to do that.
Hmm.
Um, but like I said, I would definitely not take away that there was some privilege
Yeah.
that allowed for me to do some of the things that I'm doing.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing. I think it's really important that, even you as a behavioral health special, behavior health professional, have your own challenges in life. Like, it
Absolutely.
doesn't escape anyone. We all
No,
have them. And so, I guess the key is making certain that you have the proper tools to get you through it. Right.
absolutely.
So, with that, what would you say are the most common issues that seem to be most prevalent during this unprecedented time?
Mm. So with regard to what I see in my office,
Hmm.
the persons that come in, of course, the biggest piece was anxiety, right?
Hmm.
Because people were concerned about what the future is going to hold.
Yeah.
Are they going to be okay?
Hmm.
And that was those that um, had to stop working. That included those that still were working, maybe slightly different concerns, but still this idea of this unknown and just what's going to happen to us. And I think as now we're in like what, month 4, I am seeing a little bit more
Something
of
like that. 4 or 5,
82 million.
3. I don't
um,
know.
I'm seeing a lot more of the depressed mood start to pick up.
Hmm.
Because now it's, we all thought there would be some end in sight. I definitely try to inform people that I knew and clients like, well, it's definitely not going to be over in a month. So
Right.
all of that initial talk about April's or whatever wasn't going to happen. But even I thought by now, we'd get back in, and clearly we tried to get back in and it blew up. So I'm seeing persons that now they've been isolated for a while, right? Not able to continue some of the ways in which they would take care of themselves because they've been stuck at home. So really struggling with like how to still be okay, how to kind of push past fear, so that they can still live instead of just survive right now, right? Because there's different skill sets that you have to morph into. For moments in time, survival skills are really helpful, but you can't live that way, right? And so people
Mhm.
are needing to transition to how do I still thrive in spite of what's going on? And for some, that's a bit of a struggle. So again, I'm seeing a lot more, still the anxiety, but a lot more like depressed mood pieces. Um, people feeling, everybody's over the Zoom calls. And,
Yeah.
it's like, okay, I need to get out. I'm going a little stir crazy. Um, my little exercise at home routines, I'm over it, just um, those. Yeah, so, you know, even myself, I thought by now we would be done, right? Or at least be able to get back out. Um, and then we got back out and everything went back through the roof. So we're back at home, right? So
Mhm.
people are really struggling to now kind of evolve in their resources. What's going to help them like keep going, um, be a bit grounded in spite of uncertainty. So, I'm having to kind of really help my clients process some of that and really normalize it because everybody is thinking they're kind of just losing it. And it's like, well, no, we're in a pandemic. There's no way to be.
Right.
And so even recognizing like you have to normalize the fact that your anxiety should be higher, that your mood is going to be more impacted because this is not your norm, at least not
Mhm.
yet.
Right.
So I'm helping them uh, also not be worried about being so worried.
Hmm.
But again, in the room, a lot of the anxiety and the depressed mood part for
Hmm.
sure.
Yeah, I mean that makes total sense to me because I have my peaks and valleys with that
Yeah.
too. Like you, I thought, well, by the summertime,
Yes.
perhaps we'll be in a different space. But we're in it for the long haul.
Right.
And one of the things that I think is really interesting is that there are a subgroup or part of the population that is really against wearing masks. And
Yes.
so one of the things that I thought about, well, there's the obvious issue with, the leadership and the leadership not modeling the behavior and,
Absolutely.
frankly, just dismissing, being very
Mhm.
dismissive of it.
Yes.
Um,
And the
but
professionals.
right,
Being
and the
dismissive
medical
as well.
professionals, right. um,
Yes.
but aside from that big influence, I think I was thinking, and I wanted to get your opinion on this,
Sure.
that another part of it might just be that there might be a desire to just pretend like it's all, for lack of a better word, gonna just go away. It's gonna be beautiful.
Yes.
you know?
So a bit of denial there.
Yeah. So.
Yes. I mean, I think people definitely have married themselves to a narrative that, this is just some big to do because those kinds of things don't happen here. they happen other places.
Yeah.
And the reality is they have happened here before, but not in our lifetimes. So yeah, definitely people can get stuck in their denial. I mean, that's across the board. It's been interesting to watch for sure, but I think, you know, the truth about our society is that it's much more individualistic, right? We don't, while different communities, you know, sub-communities are more collectivist, I would say American society, not so much, right? So this idea of doing a certain thing for the greater good and, you know, wear a mask, not just for yourself, but for others, it's a harder sell than in places where the greater good outweighs the individual.
Right.
So we've definitely been seeing a vast, diverse reactions to wearing masks and what it actually means. You know, I've seen, and I wouldn't say it's everybody, but you know, the different people like that. This is a free country, and you know, I should be able to do, you know, and it's like, what does that have to do with just like basic care and concern about our health? So,
Courtesy. Yeah.
yes, people definitely have some very polarized views that I think really clouds their understanding of what's really happening for us and just what would be a better way of dealing.
Yeah, for sure. And just a side note, like I know I in my neighborhood Facebook group,
Mm-hmm.
there's a one of the women in our community who is this is her day 7 of battling COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And so and she was talking about how she had been doing everything right. You know, she wore the mask, she's wiped down everything, everyone else in her family's negative, but she's positive. And
Oh,
she's like, it
wow.
had to just be one of my Albertson or CVS runs, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so here she's wearing the mask to be courteous and protect others, but then others aren't protecting her. So
Absolutely.
yeah, I just
And I've
find
had
that really
several
interesting.
clients who have had to bury people, right?
Mhm.
A number of them, it was family members that lived in like New York and New Jersey.
Mhm.
Um, but even recently, I've had a couple of clients that I'm seeing virtually, where now they've had to quarantine themselves because a family member is now showing symptoms, right? So it's definitely not, you know, just some made up farce. Like it's
Right.
happening
The
around
real
us.
thing. Yeah. Yep.
Absolutely. And we need to get on board.
Hmm. For sure. Yeah. So so given all of that, so this is a really, you know, dynamic issue. It's very complex in terms of even our understanding as things like evolve day by day by day. You know, I listen to the medical experts, and I, you know, I follow and track the numbers, and
Yes.
um, you know, that's where I get my advice.
Yes.
And so but even with that, it can become very overwhelming, right? You know,
Absolutely.
just, you know, you want to be informed. And so you know, every morning I tune in CNN. I'm just kind of trying to check in, see what's going on, then I kind of walk away and let the day occur, and then I check
Good.
in
Good.
again, you
Okay.
know. But aside from that, you know, there's still this thing that's looming back here in
Absolutely.
your day to day, right? So the way you move about, the way that you our children are home, right? Or everybody's home. And so what should we be doing to really take care of ourselves during this time? Like, what are the top behaviors that we should be adopting to make sure that, you know, we're doing our best to be okay?
Absolutely. Well, I think the first piece, even to note, is about our cognition, right? Because I'm getting a number of clients or even persons that I just speak to
Mm-hmm.
where they want to feel comfortable like they did before. And I think first you have to know you shouldn't exactly be comfortable in a pandemic. We don't need to be overwhelmed, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the reality is that it is uncomfortable. There is this extra piece that's looming that we have to be very mindful of our actions and how we're moving in the world. So I think first it's becoming comfortable being a bit uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's making people a little, you know, it's unsettling to feel that
Yeah.
discomfort. And in truth, it's a very normal process. But then beyond that, I would say what I've been talking to people about is first really having a routine, especially for my persons that have been home. There's something to be said about, being able to get up, leave your home, go to work, have your lunch, come back in. Kids came from school. There was a routine that people were very used to.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's really important that you maintain some type of routine, not kind of randomly getting up. Everybody's been talking about their Zoom business meetings where there's all business on top and a party at the bottom, right? But it's like, it's fun for a moment, but you got to get back to kind of some level of routine. The truth for most of us is that we've had a routine since we were in preschool, right? Some bell system, some whistle, something. And it keeps us from having to wonder and worry about what we're doing every day. So I would say first starting with a routine, even if it's a basic one, just knowing what you do in the morning, what do you do in the afternoon, what do you do in the evenings. Our physical activity is really important because we are made to move. And so incorporating some kind of exercise in your day is definitely important, especially since we've been home a lot more. Some of that random activity, it didn't need to necessarily be the gym or anything, but just walking around, maybe being at the office or what have you. Like, we're not doing that. We're just walking from one room of the house to another. So I would say figuring out how to incorporate movement. Again, the body is made to move. The mind and body are clearly connected. And so it helps with giving clarity of thought, being able to make decisions, a certain general sense of well-being, given the various chemicals that get released, like you need to move your body. I would say staying connected, because it is easy to just kind of start to isolate and not be as talkative. And I think, again, initially people were really, pretty good about connecting to their friends and talking to them. But as time has gone on, people are not maybe connecting as much. So staying connected, however that is. And then I think evolving kind of your general resources. So earlier I mentioned, like, I just, bought a kayak. I've been wanting a kayak for a few years, but probably without COVID, it'd have been a few more before I got one. But in my mind, I said, I got to get out this house, but do so in a way that I felt safe enough, right? So my own stuff, not renting anything, but getting out in nature and even still being around people. So I might not be right in their space. There'll definitely be some social distancing, but I'm going to be on the lake with the paddle boarders and the canoers and the other kayakers and what have you, right? So still being part of. But that was me kind of trying to evolve from what's my random day to day. Like, how can I still get out and do, but in a safe way? So we're having to do things a little differently. I've had people clean up their garages and make it like a little skate rink for their kids, or have to rearrange the furniture in their home, because guess what? You're not actually entertaining a bunch of people. So that living room can look a little differently, but look a certain way that's very helpful for what you're doing right now. And then you can go back to, the entertaining living room space or what have you later on. So as opposed to trying to just keep things the same and then just change us, actually shifting our environment in a way that actually supports where we are, I think is also very important. So, using that backyard that some of us just, make sure someone else trims, but we don't really get out there, like using it a little bit more, creating, comfortable, quiet corners where you're going to read or where you're going to just relax. That's a little different than maybe what it looked like before. So again, kind of evolving and expanding some of our resources.
Yeah. I mean, especially I like what you're saying, especially the part about repurposing the common area space, for, to make it more functional for right now. I had to kind of get on board with that because I'm one of those people who I want things to be a certain way, and it was driving me crazy because, I have a home office, but, now my husband's working from home full time. And so, he's at the kitchen table and I'm like, hey, I love those piles you're making. They're so nice. Love it. So, but I've had to adopt, adapt, and accept a little bit of the imperfection that's taking place,
Absolutely.
and just be okay with it. I mean, it certainly relieved some of my anxiety that I was having, because I
Yes.
think I was just kind of hyper focusing on it because it was something that I could control, you know.
Yes,
Um,
absolutely. And so it's important for us to still feel like we have control and power in what's going on for us, but just recognize that it needs to look differently. And some of us were holding on to what it was to
mhm.
try and maintain power and control, as opposed to adapting to have true power and control in the current situation.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So, in your current position,
Yeah.
you're having to find balance in your own life. How do you protect yourself when you're giving so much of yourself to your clients and, being of service? And, how do you protect yourself from absorbing the energy and taking it home and not, being able to have that even keel for yourself?
Well, I would say, I learned some time ago, prior to being a psychologist, I was a social worker.
Hmm.
Um, and so, one of the wonderful blessings of doing this work is that I've been able to really work with people and be a witness to their resilience. So, I don't necessarily feel like I'm always listening to negative stories. I really feel like I get to witness how people survive and then move toward thriving again in spite of very adverse situations.
Oh,
And
awesome.
so that's
So,
kind of
yeah.
what I pick up from it. It's really not the negative part, but just the fact that they're still here. I tell my clients, if you've got to my couch, you've done a pretty good job. And so maybe you've decided to come in to do things better, but not because everything completely was falling apart. It just wasn't where it needed to be for you.
Hmm.
So I really look at it in that way. So I'm not necessarily feeling bombarded by a bunch of negativity. But I would say I definitely don't watch the news, or find myself glued to it. I definitely, unplug. Both friends and family tend to ask why I even have a phone, because I never answer it. But, it's like after I've talked all day, I do need to just be. Um,
Hmm.
but I'm very careful of what I take into my psyche. It was very difficult given the civil unrest after Mr. Floyd was killed. Um, I really had to kind of sit and mentally prepare myself to still be able to be present with
Hmm.
clients, that next week, because it was really difficult. And I will say that even with COVID, but definitely with um, the civil unrest, um, it's taken me, I've really had to dig deep to try and care for myself, because I didn't get a moment off, right? I didn't get to stop working or anything. I had to just keep going, and then process all of that at the same time. So I will say definitely with Mr. Floyd being killed, and beyond the other things leading up to that, it was a lot more difficult. But for instance, in that situation, I did not watch the video of him being murdered. I knew of it clearly. And so, but to watch someone basically, being killed on camera is not something that I know would be healthy for me. So I tend to, in my news, read it more than watch it, or different kind of events going on. I really am very guarded in how I take in information, so
Hmm.
that I can kind of have control over it, if you will, and process it in a way that allows me to still function,
Yeah.
given everything that I am maybe hearing. It's not to suggest that some of the stories that my clients present aren't sometimes really sad and concerning. They are. I just have the ability to see them as well, and that they
Hmm.
have lived through it and are still sitting on my couch. And so that gives it some balance. But like I said, with the other pieces, I try to be very careful of what I'm taking in and how I take in information,
Hmm.
so that I can process it and still keep going.
Yeah. Wow. I love that you flip it.
Mhm.
You flip it. So, I've never heard anyone say it quite that way. That is a behavioral health professional,
Mhm.
that you choose to focus on how well, how they're overcoming the challenge as
Yes,
opposed to the challenge itself. You
absolutely.
focus on the peak as opposed to the valley. And so,
Absolutely.
yeah, so
That's
that
what I'm
actually,
trying to help them do, right? So
yeah.
I can't see them differently than what I'm trying to have them see themselves.
So that, so in that way, your clients um, kind of feed you as opposed to
Absolutely.
take away from you.
Yes, there's definitely some reciprocity in the relationship for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
learn a lot from my clients,
Yeah.
and I'm hoping to, be of help to them. But, I definitely believe that when my clients come in, it's within them already. And my job is simply to be kind of that light along their path to help them see areas that are just a bit obscured, right? Like I'm
Mm-hmm.
not, fixing their life. They're
Yeah.
fixing, right? They see
Yeah.
me for like 45 minutes. It's them, not
Mm-hmm.
me. Um, I have the luxury of being able to sit in the chair and see parts that are hard for them because they're the one walking the path.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, I need to be able to see what's going on a certain way and help them see it as well so that they can make the changes that they're wanting to see. So
Mm-hmm.
absolutely.
Yeah. And your self-awareness, knowing that you yourself should not watch the video,
Yes.
of Mr.
No,
Floyd.
people have to be very careful
Yeah.
of what they take in.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
the video is good for the non-believers, but when you already know what you know,
Right.
you know, you don't need to watch it. So I can appreciate that. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, yeah. So how important to you are your friends? Like how important is friendship as you find balance in your life? Because I don't think I mentioned you have 3 children
Yes. Yes.
and your wife. And so that comes with its own life challenges, just being a mom and just navigating the lives of your children because you're living their life along with them, as their partner, as their guide. And so, which can be interesting sometimes. And so, how do you fit your friends in and how important is that to you, those relationships?
Well, exceedingly important, right? Because your friends pour into you a little bit more. I would say, your kids love you unconditionally, but they want you to pour into them.
Mm-hmm.
And your spouses, care for you too, but they also want you to pour into them as well as pour into you. But I would say your friends aren't necessarily trying to completely get. They're really just like, let's party together, right? So I would say my friends allow me a little bit more to be just Stefanie as opposed to Stefanie the wife or Stefanie the mom or Dr. Pettaway the psychologist. My friends just let me be Stefanie.
Yeah.
And so they know where all the skeletons are buried, and we get to just have a good time. So they're very important. Now I don't always talk to them because, as I've said before, my true self is a bit of an introvert, so I can be by myself probably a little bit more than others.
Mm-hmm.
But my friends can appreciate that, and they know it's not personal. It's just me.
Yeah.
But then when we connect, they just bring light to the world, just
Mm-hmm.
to be able to talk about what's going on and share laughs, maybe certain times share tears. So friendship is extremely important.
Yeah.
My best friend actually is in Minnesota, and we cannot talk for months. And still, when we connect, it's like we were back in high school talking and just catch up. And, she knows my cousins, I know hers. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
really having grown up together. So
Mm-hmm.
very important, my friends, very
Mm-hmm.
important.
Yeah, I think too, and I think that's what I'm hearing you say is that, they allow you to, it's a place where you can go and be vulnerable. Like a lot of times when we're navigating parenthood and even in our navigating our marriages and, feeding them, we have to be very courageous. We have to
Yeah.
be very strong. We cannot, or we limit, our children need to see us strong,
Yes.
right? And sometimes vulnerable too. They need to know we're people, but there's sometimes that really vulnerable space where you can just kind of lay it all out, like, oh, you
Absolutely. Absolutely.
with your friends,
Yes.
So
No, absolutely. And, I definitely believe my husband is my friend too, but it's still a different dynamic
yeah.
than my girlfriends, if you will.
Mhm.
So yes, your girlfriends can just let you be a little crazy and
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I have one final question for you.
Sure.
And it is what do you think that COVID-19 is teaching us?
Hmm. I think a bit humility, right? A bit of humility, that we're not above it. Um, and I think for me personally, that sense of how we were so distracted. And I think it caused us to really have to get to the bare bones, really deal with us as people, as human beings, where before we could all be very distracted by whatever else might be going on. So yeah, definitely some humility. Um, as much as there's persons who are fighting about wearing masks and everything else, I do think that it has allowed people to open their eyes a bit more, and to see one another differently. So I'm encouraged by that part, how things have been moving. It's not that different issues are new to us at all. They're not. But I do think people have been able to take some of the rose-colored glasses off and start
Yeah.
seeing things. And that was, COVID, no sports, no extra random,
Yeah.
distractions. So I would say, you know, not to be dismissive of how it's been very negatively impactful for a lot of people, but I do think it allowed us to be human
Hmm.
again.
I
So
totally agree with you. I totally agree with you regarding it. I think COVID actually restored my faith in humanity.
yes,
As you mentioned, as much as there are people who are battling over wearing a mask or not really believing that the social justice issues that are maybe important to me or you, with Black Lives Matter
absolutely.
or any of the other issues that have bubbled up
Mhm.
to the surface. And now everyone has the opportunity to watch and learn
Absolutely.
without the distractions.
Mhm.
um, I think that even with all of those disagreements and those polarities, there is a much larger group of people who are really rallying around
Absolutely.
humanity on a global scale.
Mhm.
And I think that is absolutely amazing.
Absolutely. I mean, even to see some of the protests happening in different countries, and it was amazing. There's been a couple of times I've seen, that brought tears to my eyes, people that you just wouldn't have even thought would care.
Right.
Caring. So yes, to that end, I think it has been very uplifting to see that piece.
Hmm.
And we probably would not have seen it, not at the level that it's been,
Yeah.
without something that caused us to all take a seat. So,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Even in my immediate community,
mhm.
I was very happily,
Yes.
surprised to see, how much support and
Mhm.
empathy there was.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
there has been. So, yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, Dr. Pettaway, thank you so much for taking the time to
Yeah,
sit
of
and talk
course.
with me. And this has been really enlightening. I think it'll be very, very helpful for my listeners
Okay, wonderful.
to not only know that we're all vulnerable at times and we all are um, tr- along our journeys experiencing peaks and valleys. And it's okay, you
Yes.
know. It's
Yes.
okay. And one of the things you said during this time to just be comfortable with being uncomfortable
Yes.
because it's an uncomfortable time and that makes us normal, right?
Yes. Right.
um, having a routine. I really love that because as you were describing it, it really alerted me to the fact that not knowing what's coming next can cause a lot of anxiety. So
Absolutely.
just even if you're in the unfortunate position of having been laid off from work,
Yes.
Just knowing that at 8 o'clock, I'm going to sit down and have my tea or my coffee, or I'm going to practice my yoga or whatever it might be. I'm going to have breakfast. At noon, I'm going to, take a break and have my lunch right before
Mhm.
I do my afternoon walk, or I'm going, whatever
Yeah.
that looks like. Just having that routine and knowing what's coming next is, I'm sure, for those who haven't had a schedule, putting one in place will
Important.
be very helpful. So,
Absolutely.
well, thank you so much for your
Well,
time.
thank you again for
Yeah.
inviting me. It was fun.
Yeah. Have a phenomenal Wednesday.
Thank you. And you as well.
Thank you.